So we have here Lori Autumn. Is it Autumn or Odom? What's the proper way to?
Odom.
Odom. Okay, I'm sorry for the wrong emphasis. And Lori is in charge of international relationships at the Nashville Greater Area Nashville Chamber of Commerce. And it's a unique challenge. In fact, I'm very, very happy that we have it in the in X-Culture, because traditionally we work with or focus on businesses, so companies that make products or offer services. But we always wanted to have something that is not purely commercial, that is not a typical business organization. And so, and the reason for that is because we have many students who come from different backgrounds, different majors, who perhaps are not necessarily your typical MBA student. Students who perhaps major in political sciences, or maybe public administration, or maybe business, but they would like to work more for the public organizations, municipal governments, and so on and so on. And so we always wanted to have some partners that are not your typical commercial organization, but something else. And so here we essentially have a city of Nashville. So, or at least the branch of the city of Nashville's government that deals with promoting business in the greater Nashville area, and the relationships and foreign direct investment and all that stuff. And so we have this unique challenge here. And so I suppose it would be, given that we have so many people who have just started and may not have much information about how your organization works, maybe a little overview first about what you do, how you operate, what the task is, and then we will move more into questions, answers, and feedback.
Sure. And as Vas mentioned, go back and watch the very first webinar. Right. I gave a lot of information in that for those of you that are just starting your project. That would be a good first step. We are, the organization I work with is the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. We are a non-for-profit organization. We are a chamber of commerce, and we also have the economic development plan for a 10-county region of the middle part of our state. Our state is Tennessee. If you are in North Carolina, you obviously are familiar with Tennessee. We're adjacent to Tennessee. We're very centrally located in the southeast United States. So somewhat kind of in the middle third of the country, in the center. For the person that's in China, we are in the state of Tennessee, who has an office in Beijing. So that might be something you want to look at. There might be some resources through that office. We have a representative who works on foreign direct investment that's in China. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone in Venezuela. We do have someone who's in the UK, Germany, Italy, Spain and France, Benelux. I believe those are all, Japan. Those are our main foreign offices. My role at the Chamber of Commerce is working with international companies and international governments to develop relationships that result in foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is when a company whose parent company is located in another country decides to make an investment into the United States. That's how we'll define foreign direct investment. So basically, it's a company that's in, let's say, Japan would be a great example. Nissan is a Japanese motor company. They manufacture automobiles and sell them around the world. They have a large assembly facility in our 10-county region, about 20 minutes from Nashville, and that's an example of foreign direct investment. Nissan actually made their first investment outside of Japan in North America, in Smyrna, Tennessee, in the late 70s, early 80s. And that really started a lot of foreign direct investment in our region from Japan. So the challenge for you is to help us do kind of three things. The first part of the challenge is to identify new markets where foreign direct investment might be looking to come to the United States. In the information that's provided, you'll find we've outlined our major markets for foreign direct investment. Those are Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, the UK. China is becoming a larger market for us. All of that is in the information on the project, but it's to look at those key markets where we're already getting investment and think about what other markets might be out there. Are people beginning to make investments from, let's say, India? Are they beginning to make investments? And by investment, let me pause and tell you, we're looking for something that is like a manufacturing facility or a distribution facility, not just buying a hotel. We're looking for something that retains the brand of the parent company when it enters the United States and establishes a location and hires local people. So that's kind of the really specific definition of foreign direct investment that we're looking for. So are there companies that are located in other countries that may not be on our radar that are looking to make investments in the United States? Where are those countries, and why would Nashville, Tennessee be a good place for them to make that investment? That's what I'm looking for from you. That's kind of one way to look at the project. A second way is to look at our already established markets. I mentioned those earlier: Japan, Germany, the UK, and to tell us, if you're in those established markets, what might be a new sector that could be looking to come to the United States. So right now, our key sectors are advanced manufacturing, healthcare management, music and entertainment, and tourism. Is there something that's outside of those areas that might be coming from Japan or coming from Germany that we should start to put more resources into to investigate what companies might be in new sectors to come here? And then the third part of the challenge, we will be starting our very first nonstop flight to London's Heathrow Airport on May 4th. A big piece of the work I do is building relationships with organizations that are similar to what I do. So they work with companies that are looking to go do work around the world. The question here is, can you help me find organizations in London, in the UK, an easy flight from London that might be good partners for me? People that could help us build relationships that would ultimately result in opportunities for businesses in Nashville, Tennessee. So that might be organizations like mine, like chambers of commerce, economic development entities. Maybe it's an automobile manufacturers association or an aerospace association, organizations whose members might be looking to come to the southeastern United States. Those are the types of relationships that I'd be looking for there. So those are the three angles of the project. Either one, identify new countries, which would be basically new markets that would be looking to come to the United States to open a facility, primarily manufacturing, distribution, maybe an office in the US, a sales office. One of those types of companies. The second way to look at this would be looking at our established markets like Japan, Germany, China, and our established sectors. Are there new sectors that might be interested in looking in the United States? And would they make sense to look in Nashville? Right. And then the third, looking at the London area and finding organizations that would make sense for us to build relationships with so that we can further the knowledge of Nashville into these European markets associated with an inaugural flight to London.
Mm-hmm. Right, makes perfect sense. So basically, cities want more jobs, better jobs, and companies invest all around the world. In fact, if I can share my screen, I just looked here. So those of you students who don't know, the United States is the world's largest recipient of the foreign direct investment. So every year, companies, governments invest and open businesses around the world. And so if you look at the countries, the United States last year received over $3.5 billion in foreign direct investment, meaning that other companies created businesses in the United States with an investment of that much money. And then obviously different cities want those businesses in their locations. So if Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Nissan want to build a factory, everybody wants that factory to be in their city. And so here the question is, how does Nashville can convince the potential investors to build a factory in Tennessee and not somewhere else? And that's, by the way, a very typical question for any city. So wherever you live, I'm sure your city tries to do the same. So this exercise, in trying to help Nashville prepares you for a similar task in the future where you perhaps will be either working for a city or just as a concerned citizen of that city, resident of that city may want to think about it. And so here in Nashville is a client, but it's a great opportunity for you to kind of think about it and test drive this idea and see how it works, right?
And Boss, to add to that, the field that we work in, and one of the questions that came up several times in our first webinar was people were trying to understand the role of the Chamber of Commerce and what the Chamber of Commerce does. Think of us really, in this case, we are an economic development organization,
right,
that is housed within the Chamber of Commerce. So what you're looking for, if you're researching to get an idea of kind of where our values lie and what's important to us as an organization, really think about economic development. So think about job creation, think about capital investment. So that means someone's putting investment into your community. That increases your tax base. So you have more dollars in your coffers to operate, pay for schools, to pay for roads. Economic development, as Voss said, happens everywhere.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where you're listening to this webinar. Every city, every state, every country has people who do what I do, and that's to advocate for why their city should be a location for a company to relocate.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. A few questions, and let's perhaps get into the questions now. So again, students, if you do have questions, either type them or raise your hand and we will add you to the conversation. But there are a few questions already here. One, and we did touch upon that in the first webinar, but just to refresh the memory. So what other big companies are already operating in Tennessee? And then do you know why they chose Tennessee and not a different state?
Sure. Some of the large companies, and I'll focus on foreign direct investment and not talk about the U.S. companies that are here, but our foreign direct investment companies that are here, I mentioned Nissan. So Nissan manufactures automobiles here, and they also have their North American headquarters here. Bridgestone, another Japanese company, they manufacture tires all through the state of Tennessee, and then they also have their North American headquarters here. UBS is a Swiss-owned bank, so they have in Nashville, Tennessee, their back office functions are here. So that's basically the accounting functions, the not kind of frontline commercial banks, but the things that make the bank run. They employ people here.
So why Tennessee? Why didn't they build their factories or businesses in North Carolina, for example?
If you're in Tennessee, and you really need to look at a U.S. map, and in some of the information that I provided, there's a population distribution map. And when you look at that, it shows by shading the areas of the U.S. where the most people live. So if you look at that, Tennessee is right in the center of the majority of the population that's on kind of the eastern side. From the Midwest is what we call it to the East Coast. So that's a big part. Location is a huge part of why people locate to Nashville, Tennessee. They want to be somewhere central where they can get their goods in easily and where they can send their finished product out to their client easily and most cost effectively. So they look for location. They look for workforce. So what state is going to have the right mix of people who can make my product or good, or who can staff my corporate office? And we rank very highly for educated workforce. They also look for cost. So if someone's looking at, let's say, California or New York or Nashville, the cost of doing business here is about half what it is to do the same business in California or New York, because every U.S. state has a different tax. So there are federal taxes, which are for the entire country, that an employer would pay no matter where they locate. But then there are taxes at the state level, and those add up. And Tennessee is very competitive at the state level. We have no tax on personal income tax.
Oh, you don't? Oh, lucky you. That's like 7-8% savings. We have 7.8 in North Carolina. Whoa.
So we have, if you are a employee here and you make, let's say you make $100,000, basically the state does not take any of that money from you. Where if you are in, as Voss said, North Carolina, if you're in New York, if you're in California,
it's like 15% state income tax. That's
if you're in Kentucky, those states all levy a tax on your income. So that's a huge savings right there, and it makes our wages more competitive than when compared to other states.
I also imagine property taxes are probably much lower in Nashville or in Tennessee than, for example, in California.
Exactly. We have no state property tax. So our state also does not take a portion of your property tax. There's a local property tax, but no state property tax. So for businesses that are really looking at the bottom line and how much it's going to cost me to operate in that U.S. state or that U.S. city, Nashville fares very, very well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Scott Frew, I guess I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. You raised a hand and you had a question, so I added you to the conversation. You can talk.
It's Scott Free, like F-R-E-E, but that's all right.
Sorry about that.
No, that is okay. So one of the questions that I've been thinking about is for you guys as a chamber, is it more of a partnership that you guys want to have reach out to other businesses that are already existing if we bring someone in, or would you guys want to do like a project-based joint venture piece that we'd want to be looking for?
Scott, that's a great question. And you've hit upon something where we are best equipped to handle companies that are established and have their own funding. So a company that is maybe already operational in the country where they're parented, those we have the most ready assistance for, because we know what to do with them. If there is a company that you feel is ripe for a joint venture, that's also something that we try to help with. But from our standpoint, it's very difficult to find joint venture partners for foreign companies unless it just happens to be in a very unique situation. So I'm sorry, I know that's not a great answer. I would say we're best equipped to handle established companies. But if you have anything that's a joint venture that you'd like to include, I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah, fair enough. Jasmine Golden, I see you want to ask a question. Just unmute your microphone and you can talk. In fact, I muted you, so you can talk now. It seems like we... All right, so yes, go ahead, Jasmine, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. She mentioned 4 major investors, Nissan, Bridgestone, and UBS. I didn't hear the 4th one.
did I mention a fourth one? I'm trying to think.
You said you had four major.
You know, I will send you, Jasmine, or Boss, can I send the foreign
Sure.
direct investment directory to you to post?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'm searching it now. If you go to the Wikipedia article, Nashville economy, you will see a good collection. And so from what I see so far, you actually have quite a few companies there. In fact, that's literally dozens.
Yeah.
AutoZone,
We have around,
FedEx, yeah. So it's a lot of companies. I'm not sure how many of them are international and how many of them are local.
we have 327 companies that are located in the Nashville region that are via foreign direct investment.
Mm-hmm.
So they are kind of in our 10 county footprint. A new announcement and some project that we're really excited about is Philips Healthcare. They're based in the Netherlands. Philips is going to open an office here that's going to do some back office, but also some technology development. So we're very excited about that organization coming here. We have a tremendous amount of companies that are located there primarily in the manufacturing sector, but we are growing some companies like Jackson National Life Insurance is a subsidiary of Prudential Insurance that's based in London. Willis Towers Watson is based in London. They're also insurance. Mitsui is based in Japan. They are here. They're doing back office work. I'm trying to think who else. It is such a long list, Jasmine. I can get with Boss and make sure that
I just Googled it, and it's literally, they have like the 200 biggest companies in Tennessee, and it seems like it's quite a few of them actually international. I do recognize quite a few.
Yeah.
So it is a popular destination for sure. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
A few more questions that came by email, and then again, if you have more questions, feel free to join us. One, so the political environment is kind of mixed in the United States at this time. On the one hand, some people find it a little unstable, but on the other hand, we do have now a major tax cut for the corporate income tax. Do you think that will make the United States in general and Tennessee more attractive for foreign direct investment?
I think in some ways, yes, it definitely will. I would have thought that some of the rhetoric that we're hearing might have been, what's the word? It might have been a turnoff for companies. They might have looked in other places. But to be honest, we're receiving as many requests as always, if not more.
Well, the big difference is, federal income tax on the companies used to be 35, and now the new one is 21. It is a big difference. I imagine.
Fall and fall again.
Yeah, there are some projections that it may lower the federal, may increase the federal budget deficit, but for the companies, that seems like it's
Yeah, and companies follow profit. So they're coming to the United States because they want to gain market share in a large consumer economy. So Nissan manufactures cars here because they can sell them to the US market, which is a huge market when compared to Japan or really anywhere else. And because they can export those cars to Mexico, they can export those cars to Canada. That's why they manufacture here. And that's kind of the case for any of the manufacturing companies. They either need to be here because a large client like a Nissan has come and they supply Nissan with the wires that go in seats. That's why they're in this market, because there's opportunities for them to make money. And as companies look to grow and expand, they almost have to enter the US market to really, if they want to grow here and have a market share, they have to be in the US.
Right. In fact, I just realized my first two cars in the United States were Nissans, most likely made in Tennessee. Didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's a Honda and a BMW. So I think Honda is in South Carolina and BMW.
Alabama. There's one in Alabama.
Alabama and BMW, I think in South Carolina. Yeah. A question. So how about NAFTA? So I understand that because of NAFTA, it makes sense to make or assemble products in the United States, or at least Mexico or Canada, as opposed to shipping them from Japan or Europe. So is that a factor? And then with all the talks about the potential for revising or revisiting NAFTA, does that potentially create a threat for foreign direct investment?
You know, that's a great question. And what's going to happen with NAFTA? There's a tremendous amount of concern from the automobile manufacturers that are located here who are worried about country of origin contents and the Trump administration's view that those should be higher. You know, there's a great statistic, and I'm not going to be able to quote it 100% accurately, but you know, it's basically saying that a product kind of goes from the U.S. to Mexico and back again several times before it winds up into a good here. So supply chain and the value of NAFTA and how it's going to affect pricing, it's very complex, and it's just going to, I don't know how to even answer that question. I think we're far off from seeing a final kind of stance on NAFTA. The last I heard was saying that this would probably push out these negotiations to 2019. Yep. I think there's enough pressure from the business community. I don't think they'll pull the plug on NAFTA. I think it's going to continue to be probably a awkward negotiation as we go into the rest of 2018. In Mexico, will go into presidential elections. Yeah. So, you know, I would not let NAFTA influence the way you're looking at companies locating here.
And things like that take years to negotiate anyway.
Yeah.
Scott, Katya, G, I see guys, you raise your hands and ask questions, so feel free to talk if you would like to. And meanwhile, I'll actually go through your question. Like, for example, G. Lee is asking, is there a minimum requirement about the size of the company, for example, capital or number of the local employees?
We would prefer that it is a company that has at least 25 employees and would be making at least a $500,000 capital investment. Right. But that's a preference for the purpose of this project. If you have companies that are smaller, that's fine.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Scott, I see you raised your hand. Did you want to ask another question?
Yeah. So based on what we're seeing as a team and for this project, we see
in the early track.
What's that?
You are in the early track. You've been working on it for a few weeks, right?
Yeah, we've been working on it for a few weeks.
Share with us what you have in mind and maybe get some feedback on your work.
Okay. So we're looking at a company in China called Kaboro. And they've got 3 locations, so they're smaller, and they work with artificial intelligence through application with healthcare management, and I know that we're lacking behind Canada and China in that. But is Philips Healthcare looking into that too then, or it's so for us? I'm thinking maybe this company is too small to be able to foreign direct currently, but within 10 years they could. And so that's...
Yeah, Scott, I think that's a great thing to look at. That hits upon, you know, one of our target markets is China. That's where we are seeing more investment. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense. Healthcare management, Nashville is, Scott, where are you located?
Washington State.
Okay, so you may not even be aware that Nashville, Tennessee is the home of healthcare management in the United States. It's where the model for for-profit healthcare was created. There's 18 publicly traded companies that are located here and employ about 250,000 people in our region. These are hospital chains like HCA, Community Health Systems. They basically buy you know, whatever it is, they have all the purchasing power for what gets purchased for U.S. hospitals. About 75% of that purchasing power is here in Nashville. So if this is an application that would be sold into hospitals or hospital chains, that makes a whole lot of sense to be in our market and to be on our radar. your question specifically about Philips, I honestly don't know the answer to that. We've not gotten into those kind of conversations yet.
Okay. Yeah, that answers that, because I figured that we were looking at Nashville has a tech council, correct? Nashville Tech Council. Would that be part of the application piece for them, or would it just be the Hospital Corp of America?
What do you mean by application process?
I'm thinking, like, because this company is more of the the app side technology, they're obviously going to probably want to keep some of that information to themselves until they know for sure they can get it into our market.
Right.
So would we include the tech council in that piece, or just the net hospital?
So when a company like this comes into Nashville, let's say they just decide they're going to come look and see what the market's about. We usually meet with them, talk about the economy, find out what their needs are, and introduce them to people that it would make sense for them to meet. So in this case, yes, we would pull in the Technology Council. The Technology Council is also a membership-driven organization. So we might ask the Tech Council, do you have companies that are would be interested in partnering? Let's say Cabora was interested in finding a U.S. partner. So we might ask the Tech Council what companies that they have that would be interested in meeting this company for possible joint ventures and partnerships. And then we would kind of work through also the Nashville Healthcare Council. We would introduce them to several multiplier organizations and other groups that might have that company contact that would be looking for a partner to do this type of work.
Yep. Thank you. Katja Meyer, so she's a German studying in Italy. You raised your hand, you had a question. Guten Abend, es ist ja schon, Sie kennen zu lernen. I'm trying to refresh my German. Please go ahead, Katja.
Yeah, I have one question, yes.
If you want to uncover your camera, we will be even able to see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Hello. I have one more question. What are your ways to address potential investors? So you were talking about partnerships, building relationships, but how do you do this?
So, it depends. Every case is a little bit differently. Traditional economic development, what our organization has done is we focus on developing the relationships with the multipliers that interact with companies that might come here. So it's very hard, for example, to show up in Berlin and look for companies that might want to come to the U.S. is pointless. The odds of finding someone without having that kind of intel in the market is just not going to work. So we work through our state of Tennessee offices. So to use Germany for an example, we may build relationships with our state rep. The state of Tennessee has a foreign direct investment office. So we would contact the person that handles Germany, make sure they know all about us, ask them the companies that they're working with that might need information about Tennessee. Do they have someone that we should be meeting with? Do they have someone that wants to come to Nashville to look around? How can we help them? We may partner with the U.S. Commercial Services Office that's there in the area of Germany to find out if they're seeing companies that might be looking to come to the U.S. We may partner with, there's the Medical Mountains that's in southern Germany that works with, their members are health tech and medical companies. So we build relationships with those types of organizations. Same thing, like, do you have companies that you're working with that are entering the U.S. market, and how can we help them? So really, we work through those multiplier organizations in the hopes that they will know the companies that are going to come to the U.S., just like a French Chamber of Commerce might call me to say, hey, we're going to do meetings in the U.S. Do you have anyone that's looking in our market? Let me tell you why this is a good market for a U.S. company if they're looking to go into Europe. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
We don't do a lot of things like direct mailing to companies. We look at things like our social media presence and our website and working with multipliers, so maybe accountants. The people that we get really good leads from are attorneys, so lawyers, attorneys that work international projects, because they kind of know what the company is doing. They know that they're looking. Accountants that do international work are great allies for us. Representatives in those markets, like I said, kind of the state of Tennessee guy, or the person who's with the German American Chamber of Commerce, that we work those relationships and make sure that they know about Tennessee. So if it comes up, they can get them to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you place any ads in, like, for example, magazines on board of the air flights or stuff like that? Is that something?
I think that's a great idea. We have in the past, we haven't in the last several years. But that's something I think would be interesting to explore, and we'd be open to, seeing more information about that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you, Katya, for your questions. There is another interesting question from one of the students by email, Brexit. So you did mention the United Kingdom and a special interest in that country given your direct flight. And then we know that they are now in the process of leaving the EU and possibly will be looking for trade partners elsewhere. Do you think it's going to have a positive impact on you? Is it an opportunity, or it doesn't matter?
I think it definitely could be a good opportunity for us. Once again, we're at such kind of an odd state in the world right now with so many things in flux that I think it's just yet to be seen exactly how these things are going to play out.
Right, makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, students? So it seems like we will not have much time for reviewing what the submissions have been and what the feedback could be. But if you have any questions, we have about 5 minutes left before I have to run to the next meeting. So now is your opportunity. So anyone, if you would like, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Hey, Vas, I was just going to say, I know it sounds like people have been reluctant to begin to share some ideas. If there's someone that would like some feedback, I can work with you to find a time to review some kind of out of the general group of people.
Be careful with that, because you probably will get more requests for feedback than you can comfortably handle. So I know students are always hungry for feedback.
I take that back.
Right. Well, I mean, I suppose if you want to take a look at one or two, but yes. So if you guys send us what you have, or if you would like us to forward to Nashville what you already submitted in the weekly drafts, just let us know. We'll be happy to do that on your behalf. So just don't abuse that generosity. I mean, Lori is busy. So, if it takes several days, or if she cannot handle all the requests, it may take time. So I know, as I said, they may be reluctant to share publicly, but when they're given an opportunity to get feedback directly, so you may be overwhelmed with requests here. A couple more questions, if I may, before we go home. So one of the sections, or one of the questions in the challenge is entry mode and HR. And so basically they say, or the students are asking, so would you be open to establishing some presence in foreign markets, like having some sort of representatives or joint ventures or partnerships with local organizations? Or is it out of question and you only will operate directly from Nashville?
The reality is, I think we only have the budget to operate out of Nashville. So I would focus on relationships that could be developed, thinking that they would be managed from Nashville.
That makes sense. I imagine, hiring sales representatives or whatever you call them in different countries, it would be a tremendous cost. And so. Yeah. Another very interesting question, how is your performance evaluated? I'm not sure if it relates to you personally or the Chamber of Commerce or your division, but how do they decide if you did a good job or not? And then another question, do you get any bonuses when a company comes to Nashville?
To answer that question, we're evaluated as an economic development, as the economic development function is based on the number of jobs created. Are we growing the median wage? How many companies are locating here? Is our GDP rising? Those are kind of overall top line numbers. Personally, I'm evaluated on how many projects are coming in through foreign markets. Basically my metric is at least 20% of the jobs being created in the region in a year have to be through foreign direct investment.
Oh, so they actually do look at that. I was interesting. I thought they just basically say, do whatever you can and hopefully there will be something, but okay, interesting.
No, there's a metric that's attached to it.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And was there a second part of that question, Voss?
Well, yeah. So, is your compensation or your department's budget related to performance? Is it fixed, or
No.
I assume the question is, if a company, like for example, let's say you attract, I don't know, Toyota or I don't know, Airbus to establish operations in Tennessee, would that somehow be directly related to your compensation, or would it be just thank you so much and try to do even better next time? So.
For here in the job that I work in Nashville, no, there is no bonus. It is just doing my job. If in certain situations in other markets, yes, those types of bonus opportunities do exist, but they're kind of, each one is specific to kind of the location somebody's working in. Yeah. Here at our organization, and in most organizations through the state of Tennessee, most of them are this is what we're paid to do, so there's no bonus.
And I imagine it's such a complex system that it's almost impossible to kind of pin the reasons for moving, for example, to Tennessee on either one person or one factor, right? It's such a complex interplay that, you can do your job perfectly and it may not work out, and vice versa. Somebody may just simply, decide to go to Tennessee because they have, I don't know, family or something else. And that's the reason, or decided there. So I guess it would be hard.
Well, that's exactly right. That's why some of the other measurements. So, for my job, that is not the only measurement. Foreign direct investment is a piece of it. But just like you said, as the person working the project on our side, I could do everything right. But if the company makes the decision to locate somewhere else because of whatever reason they have, it's often outside of your control.
Right. And a couple of personal questions. I hope they are fine. They are acceptable. So sure. One student is asking, what is the biggest challenge of your job? So I assume, what is the hardest part of your job?
I would say the hardest part of my job is really, I'm a convener in a lot of ways. So as the role that I play is to take a company that might be looking at Nashville, make sure that they find the real estate that they need, help them connect with the city about incentives, connect them to the state about incentives, connect them to the Tennessee Valley Authority or electric provider to see if they can offer incentives. It's managing multiple relationships where everyone's goal is slightly different. So, I might get really excited about a company and what they want to do and just be super excited to help them. And, I know they need to talk to the city and I know they need some kind of incentive, but the city might say, well, we're not so excited about this project. So it's kind of managing expectations of the company, setting proper expectations for the organization that I'm introducing them to, and maybe sometimes delivering bad news and sometimes delivering good. So it's really management of relationships is probably the hardest part.
Another very interesting question, is the state of Tennessee willing to offer or has ever offered any special concessions to companies willing to relocate there?
Yes. So every state in the U.S., or I should say most states, offer incentives to companies that locate in their state, and most of those are based on the amount of jobs created and the amount of capital investment put into the state. So when someone asked earlier what size project, I said 25 jobs and 500,000 US dollars. That's where most incentives start. So that's, yes, they do offer them. They've offered them for a long time. And while we are not a state that is robust in incentives, we are competitive because our tax structure is so low.
And so what kind of incentives would those be? Would it be like additional tax breaks, or would it be some special like utilities benefits or something of that kind? Or
there's usually a few different types of incentives that can be offered. Most of them are tax credits. So they may be based on job creation and capital investment. Based upon the structure that's in place, you create a job and then you get X amount of dollars kind of put in a bank for you to use to offset your tax liability in the state. We do have training programs that are in place. That's a huge piece when a company locates. They're going to have to get their workforce trained up specifically to meet their manufacturing need or whatever their need is. They need the employees to be trained to meet their process. And oftentimes that may include, from a foreign direct investment standpoint, flying the leads here to the plant in Tokyo to work, or in Nagoya to spend 3 months finding out the processes to come back and train people here. It might mean bringing people from those foreign markets to the new facility here, and all that's very costly. So there are programs in place at the state level to help offset some of those training costs. If you are building a new facility in the middle of a field, there are things like roads and sewers, and lighting, electricity, and there's some infrastructure offsets that can help alleviate the cost that's affiliated with those investments.
And I imagine if it's a small company with 5 employees, obviously it doesn't make sense to offer too much. But if it was a large company, like if Toyota all of a sudden wants to build a factory, I'm sure it would be a much more personal approach and much more things to be open to negotiation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another question, personal one. Do you have to travel a lot for your job, and do you like it?
I love my job, and I would encourage all of you that are maybe interested in business and in marketing and in nonprofit development or NGOs to look at economic development. I think it's a field that really kind of started growing in the last 20 years, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. If you are in a market, just Google economic development and put your city name in, and you should be able to find out who's leading the charge wherever you are. I do love it. I do travel for my job. I previously worked for our state government, and I traveled a lot more when I was in that role. Here, I travel I go to Japan every other year. I go to Canada every other year. This year, I go to England. I go to the UK about every year. I was in Northern Ireland. I'll be in the Philippines this year.
That's a lot of travel, actually.
It's a lot. I know. You start, stacking it up, and it gets to be a lot. But I do love it.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would like to add is that our symposium in November, the X-Culture Symposium, so we will have one in July in Italy, but the one in November will be in Nashville, Tennessee. And so as long as you do well as students in X-Culture, you will be invited. And it will be a limited number of spots that we will be able to offer, but I hope you will be able to attend. And I definitely hope that we will be able to meet in person with Lori as well as with her organization. So that's definitely on the program. So please use that opportunity, and maybe we'll even meet face-to-face in a few months. So.
Great.
All right, well, busy days, so we are out of time. Thank you so much. For the students, as always, if you have any more questions, send them to admin@xculture.org, and we will forward them to the company, and we will the presenter generously offered you to submit your work for feedback. Again, try not to abuse that, but if you do want to get feedback, it seems like you will have that opportunity at least the first few ones. So if you would like to use that, please do. Well, thank you so much, Lori. I know it's a busy day for you right in the middle of the day, so thank you. So it will be quiet for the next few weeks, but then the early track will have their reports ready, and then in about 9 weeks from today, the late track, and that's a much bigger one. So we have about 1,000 people, 1,200 in the early track, and expect about 4,000 more in the late track. So when the late track is over, that's when you will get a big stack of reports, and hopefully there will be good ideas in them.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for coming online today.
Yes, thank you.